In the peaceful village of Ogiama, where the sun painted the earth in gold every morning and the trees whispered age-old secrets to the wind, lived a girl named Ayula. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and loved by everyone. From the moment she could walk, her fingers seemed to dance on their own. She could take a bundle of rough threads and turn them into the most beautiful cloths anyone had ever seen. Her patterns told stories of love, of ancestors, of dreams, and each time she weaved, it was like magic was flowing through her hands. People from nearby villages travelled just to watch her work, their mouths wide open in awe. Ayula's father, Chief Ikondu, was a respected man, a leader known for his wisdom and fairness. He had 2 children, Ayula from his late wife, and Duma, the son of his second wife, Mpenzi. While Chief Ikondu loved them both, it was no secret that he was especially proud of Ayula's rare gift. He would often boast to the village elders, "My daughter's hands are touched by the gods." Her cloths hung in the village square, in the palace of the kingdom's queen, and even in the sacred shrine. But in the shadow of Ayula's glowing light stood Duma, her older stepbrother, strong, proud, and desperate to be seen. Duma was not talentless. He was a decent weaver himself, but next to Ayula's brilliance, he always looked ordinary. When the villagers gathered around Ayula to admire her new work, Duma stood in the background, pretending to smile but burning inside. Every praise Ayula received felt like a slap across his pride, and every time their father clapped his hands for Ayula's cloth, Duma's heart grew heavier. He tried to impress his father too. He worked hard, crafted new designs, even studied with older weavers, but nothing seemed to be enough. Chief Ikondu would glance at his work, nod politely, and then turn back to Ayula's latest creation with shining eyes. That look, full of pride and joy, was one Duma craved for himself, but it was always for her, always for Ayula. As months passed, the gap between the 2 siblings grew. While Ayula continued to weave with love, unaware of the storm building behind her, Duma's heart slowly filled with jealousy. It started with small thoughts, why her, not me? Then it grew into bitter whispers in his mind. His stepmother, Mpenzi, noticed his struggle, and instead of calming his heart, she began to feed the fire, fanning the flames of resentment. But Ayula remained the same, kind, humble, and always ready to help. She had no idea that behind Duma's forced smiles, a dangerous jealousy was growing. A jealousy so deep, it would one day destroy everything. The annual festival in Ogiama village was the most anticipated event of the year. Villagers dressed in their brightest colors, drums echoed through the air, and laughter filled every corner. This year, the weaving competition was the main attraction, and both Ayula and Duma had entered their best work. Duma had spent weeks perfecting his cloth. He believed it was his finest creation yet. He even imagined the moment when the crowd would cheer for him, and his father would finally look at him with the pride he always gave Ayula. But when the results were announced, it was Ayula's name that rang through the village square. Her masterpiece, a tapestry woven with golden threads and deep emerald greens, told a story of their ancestors guiding the village through storms. The elders stood to applaud. Chief Ikondu wept with joy and lifted her hand high for everyone to see. Duma stood frozen. His heart sank as the crowd swarmed around his sister, ignoring him completely. He felt invisible, worthless. That night, while the village celebrated Ayula's victory, Duma sat alone under the baobab tree, his fists clenched. His mother, Mpenzi, joined him, and instead of soothing his pain, she poured poison into his ears. "You see?" she whispered, her voice low and bitter. "It doesn't matter what you do, Duma. To your father, you'll never be enough. He only has eyes for her. That girl has taken everything that should have been yours." Duma didn't speak. He didn't need to. The hurt in his eyes said it all. Mpenzi leaned closer, her voice like a serpent's hiss. "You must protect what's yours before she takes it all, even your birthright." From that night onward, something changed in Duma. He no longer looked at Ayula as his sister, but as a rival, a threat. Every smile she gave him felt fake. Every kind word sounded like mockery. He began to twist her goodness into something sinister in his mind. He told himself she was stealing the love that belonged to him, the attention, the honor, and worst of all, she didn't even seem to notice the damage she was doing. Ayula, unaware of the darkness growing in her stepbrother's heart, continued to treat him with love and respect. She shared her food, praised his work, even offered to help him improve his weaving. But to Duma, it all felt like pity. and nothing bruised his pride more than being pitied by the very person he believed had taken everything from him. Each day his heart grew heavier with hatred. The seed of jealousy that was once small had now taken root, watered by bitterness and his mother's venomous words. And though he didn't know it yet, Duma was standing on the edge of a decision that would change all their lives forever. Late one evening, as the moonlight spilled gently over the thatched roofs of Ogyama village, Duma sat with his head bowed in silence. His hands were calloused from weaving, but no cloth he made could wipe away the shame of always coming second to Ayula. His mother, Mpenzi, sat beside him, her eyes sharp and voice soft like a whispering snake. She had been watching his frustration grow day by day, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, she was ready. "My son," she began, stroking his back with false tenderness. "How long will you live in your sister's shadow? How long will you let her steal what is rightfully yours?" Duma stayed quiet, but his jaw tightened. Mpenzi leaned in closer. "As long as she weaves, you will always be nothing in your father's eyes. He will pass his legacy to her, not you. You must do something before it's too late." Duma looked up slowly, confusion and pain in his eyes. "What do you mean, Mama?" She narrowed her gaze. "You must stop her hands. Her hands are her power. Without them, there is no weaving, no praise, no pride. Once she can no longer create, the village will forget her, and finally, they will see you." At first, Duma was horrified. The thought of hurting Ayula made his chest tighten, but Mpenzi's words stayed in his head like a poisonous echo. "Her hands are her power. Stop her hands. Then they will see you." That night, Duma tossed and turned, haunted by his mother's voice and visions of Ayula smiling while the crowd cheered for her. Days passed, and Mpenzi continued to feed him poison, not the kind that kills the body, but the kind that eats away the soul. She reminded him how his father had never danced for his cloth. She told him that Ayula's success would one day push him out of the family entirely. "You were born to lead, Duma, but she is standing in your way." Slowly, the love Duma once had for his stepsister turned into something cold and bitter. His heart, once soft, became hard with resentment. Each time Ayula laughed or wove a new pattern, he didn't see a sister. He saw a rival mocking his failure. His thoughts twisted into dark shapes. Her kindness felt like insult. Her talent felt like a curse. He began to watch her closely, not as a brother, but as a hunter. Every move she made, every time her fingers touched thread, Duma's anger deepened. And soon, the idea his mother planted began to bloom into a wicked plan. In his poisoned mind, this wasn't about cruelty anymore. It was survival. If Ayula's hands could no longer create, everything would change. The spotlight would finally be his. And in that terrible moment, Duma decided her hands must be stopped, no matter what it took. It was a quiet evening, and the stars blinked gently above Ogyama village. Ayula sat outside their hut, weaving a small mat while humming a soft tune. Duma approached her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ayula," he said, "I found something in the forest today. Bright golden threads hanging from a tree. I think they could inspire your next design. Do you want to see them?" Ayula looked up, her eyes shining. She trusted Duma. Despite the tension he had shown lately, she still believed in the bond they once shared. "Really?" she asked, excited. "Show me." He led her down a narrow path into the forest. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Only the rustling leaves and their footsteps filled the air. Ayula didn't notice the way Duma kept looking over his shoulder, or how tightly he gripped the small knife in his pocket. When they reached a clearing, Ayula looked around. "Where are the threads?" There was silence. Duma stepped behind her, his breath heavy. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but his voice held no warmth. Before Ayula could turn, pain exploded through her body. Duma grabbed her arms, and with a savage cry, he raised his blade. Her screams echoed through the forest as he brought it down again and again. Blood soaked the earth. Her delicate hands, those gifted hands that created beauty, were gone, cut off by someone she loved and trusted. She collapsed, trembling, her eyes wide with shock and tears. "Why, Duma? Why?" she gasped, her voice faint, but Duma didn't answer. He stared at what he had done, breathing hard, his face pale. Then he ran, left her bleeding and broken on the forest floor, believing she would die before sunrise. Hours passed. The night grew colder. Ayula lay there, her breath shallow, life slipping away. Just when it seemed the forest would swallow her forever, footsteps approached. A crooked staff tapped the ground with every step. It was old Mama Kea, a healer known to wander the land. She was guided by dreams and whispers of the spirits, and that night they had led her here. She saw the blood, the body, the severed hands, and without panic, without fear, she knelt beside Ayula. "Child," she murmured, brushing the girl's cheek, "you're not meant to die tonight." Mama Kea wrapped her in warm cloth, crushed herbs between her palms, and whispered ancient words over her wounds. Ayula drifted into darkness, but not the final kind. The old healer lifted her gently and carried her away, deep into the hills where no one would find her. Back in the village, Duma returned with lies on his lips. He claimed he hadn't seen Ayula, that maybe she had wandered off and gotten lost. The villagers searched, but no trace was found. They mourned her, believing she'd been taken by wild animals. Only Duma and the shadows knew the truth, but Karma was watching, and Ayula was not gone, not yet. Ayula woke up to the sound of birds and the smell of herbs. She opened her eyes slowly, the pain in her body reminding her that what happened in the forest wasn't a nightmare, it was real. Her hands were gone. Bandaged stumps lay where her graceful fingers used to be. Panic gripped her, but a gentle voice soothed her from nearby. "You are safe now, child," said Mama Kea, her wrinkled hands placing a warm cloth on Ayula's forehead. "You are in Asefu. You are not alone." Asefu was a hidden village, deep in the hills, known only to a few. It was a place of healing, protected by spirits and silence. The people there welcomed Ayula with quiet kindness. No one asked questions, no one pitied her. They simply helped, day by day, moment by moment. Mama Kea became more than a healer. She became Ayula's guide, her light in the darkest time. She cleaned her wounds, fed her, and whispered words of strength into her ears when nightmares came. "You still have a purpose," she would say. "Your gift is not gone. It only needs a new way to shine." At first, Ayula couldn't believe it. How could she ever weave again without hands? Her heart ached every time she looked at the empty space where her fingers once danced with thread. But one day, while watching children play, an idea came. She saw them picking flowers with their toes, laughing with ease. A small spark lit inside her. That night, Ayula asked Mama Kea for thread and cloth. She sat by the fire, stretched her legs, and with trembling effort, tried to weave using her feet. It was hard. She failed again and again, but she didn't stop. Every night she practiced, her toes learning what her fingers once knew. Weeks passed. Her movements became smoother. Her patterns, though different, held beauty that no one had ever seen before. The villagers gathered to watch her, their eyes widened at the sight of her feet creating magic. Ayula's spirit returned, stronger than before. She was not just surviving, she was becoming something new. Soon, people from nearby lands began to hear of the girl who wove with her feet. They came to Asefu, bringing gifts, seeking her work, wanting to witness her strength. Ayula became a legend, not because of what she lost, but because of how she rose. The villagers called her Nyanyoka, meaning the one who dances with thread. Her name echoed through the hills. Children learned from her, women cried watching her work, and Ayula, though scarred by betrayal, began to smile again. In the quiet village of Asefu, Ayula rebuilt her life. She was no longer just a talented weaver. She was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even when the world tries to break you, your spirit, if strong enough, can weave itself into something even more beautiful. Back in Ogiama, the village was still mourning the loss of Ayula, believing she had vanished forever. But Duma walked taller than ever, his eyes filled with pride, not guilt. He returned to weaving, but this time his work stunned the villagers. The designs were breathtaking, unique, and deeply emotional. No one knew that every pattern he presented was stolen from the sketches Ayula once hid under her mat, sketches she had dreamed of bringing to life. People began to praise him. Duma, the boy who rose from the shadows, they said. Traders from far lands came to buy his work. Elders honored him at gatherings. Even Chief Akondu, their father, looked at him with new admiration, believing his son had finally found his path. But deep in Duma's heart, he knew the truth. Every praise, every coin, every bow he received, it all belonged to Ayula, and that truth began to eat away at him. At first, he drowned the guilt in celebration. He wore fine robes, walked with pride, and acted as though he was above everyone else. But no matter how loud the applause, it couldn't silence the whispers in his head. At night, he dreamt of blood-stained leaves and Ayula's voice calling out in pain. He would wake up sweating, clutching the same hands he had used to destroy his sister's gift. Then, strange things began to happen. One of the cloths he sold to a royal merchant suddenly unraveled on its own during a ceremony, shaming the buyer. Another time, a trader claimed the pattern looked familiar, just like the lost work of Ayula, the girl who had disappeared. Whispers started, questions followed. Did Duma really create these? Where did he learn such style so suddenly? One day, a traveling weaver from another village arrived with a woven mat, unlike anything the people of Ogiyama had ever seen. It was made with feet, not hands, but the design. It carried the soul of Ayula's original work. The weaver spoke of a legend in Asefu, of a girl with no hands who created beauty with her toes. The villagers were stunned. Chief Ekondu's face turned pale. He picked up the mat and traced the patterns with his fingers, patterns he had seen years ago in Ayula's room. Duma stood frozen as the truth began to claw its way into the open. The fame he built started to crumble. The same people who once bowed to him now looked at him with suspicion, with betrayal in their eyes. His hands, once praised for their skill, now felt heavy with shame. Karma, slow but steady, had begun to circle him like a shadow. His stolen glory was slipping through his fingers, and deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of his fall. Far away in the grand kingdom of Zoranu, stories traveled like wind, quiet but fast. One day, as Queen Samia sat in her palace garden, a trader presented her with a gift, a finely woven cloth with patterns so unique, so alive, that the queen herself paused in awe. "Where did this come from?" she asked, her eyes never leaving the fabric. The trader bowed deeply. "From a hidden village, Your Majesty, a place called Asafu. They say the weaver has no hands, yet creates with more beauty than anyone alive." The queen was stunned. She had seen art from across the continent, woven gold from the east, silk thread tapestries from the north, but nothing like this. It wasn't just the pattern, it was the soul behind the thread. She leaned forward, her voice filled with curiosity. "Send word to this weaver. Invite them to Zoranu. I must see this magic for myself." Back in Asefu, Mama Kea gently handed Ayula the royal scroll. "You've been called by the queen," she said softly. Ayula's eyes widened, her heart racing. "Me? But I am no one, just a girl who lost everything." Mama Kea smiled. "No, child, you are Naema now, a name reborn, a soul that rose from the ashes." Ayula knew she couldn't go as herself. Too many wounds, too much danger. What if someone recognized her? What if Duma found out she was alive? So she wrapped her identity in silence, covering her arms with long, flowing sleeves, her face with grace and mystery. She became Naima of Asafu, the nameless legend. When she arrived at the royal palace, servants whispered and bowed. Her fame had already entered before her feet did. Ayula moved quietly, with humble eyes, yet her presence lit the hall like sunrise. The queen welcomed her with open arms, not knowing she stood before a girl once left to die. "Show us what your feet can do," the queen requested, her voice gentle but full of curiosity. Ayula sat quietly, her cloth laid out before her. She stretched her legs, and slowly, her toes began to dance with thread. The room fell silent. Every movement she made told a story, of pain, of survival, of beauty born from suffering. Nobles who once scoffed at village artisans leaned in with wide eyes. The queen herself stood up, her heart moved. By the time Ayula finished, there were no words, only tears. The queen clapped first, followed by thunderous applause. "You are a gift from the spirits," she said. "Zoranu is honored to witness your art." But Ayula only smiled gently, never revealing her past. She was not there for revenge or pride. She came to show the world that broken things could still shine, that sometimes what we lose is what helps us rise. The royal showcase was the most anticipated event in the kingdom of Zoranu. Nobles, artists, and traders from faraway lands gathered in the grand palace hall, eager to witness the finest weavers of the land. Among them was Duma, dressed in bright royal fabric, his head held high. He had heard whispers of a mysterious weaver from Asafu, but he laughed them off. "No nameless village girl will outshine me," he told himself. He had brought his best collection, designs he claimed to have created, though they were once the soul of Ayula's hands. When Duma stepped forward to present his pieces, the crowd gasped in admiration. The cloths were intricate, full of emotion, with patterns that seemed to breathe. He smiled proudly as the queen nodded with interest. "These designs are familiar," she said, narrowing her eyes. Duma's smile twitched, but he bowed, hiding his nerves. Then came the moment the crowd waited for. "Naima, of Asafu. Ayula, now veiled and graceful, stepped forward quietly. She laid out a single cloth woven by her feet. The room hushed. Her feet moved slowly, each toe like a brushstroke, the fabric rising with beauty from beneath her. The colors danced like fire. The shapes told silent stories of betrayal, of survival, of healing. The queen leaned forward, stunned. The patterns in Neyma's cloth, they weren't just beautiful, they were alive, more alive than the ones Duma had just shown. In fact, they looked like the origin of Duma's work, like someone had copied a masterpiece and dulled it. She turned toward Duma, her face now serious. You said these were your creations, but her work breathes the same soul. Tell me, how is that possible? The crowd murmured. Duma's eyes darted. Sweat gathered on his brow. I was inspired, he stammered. It's just coincidence. But Ayula lifted her head gently. She removed her veil. Gasps filled the hall. Her face, once hidden, now glowed with quiet power. Though her arms were still covered, the people began to whisper. Some recognized her eyes. Others remembered the girl once thought dead. Then Ayula spoke, not with bitterness, but truth. These designs were once mine, born from my heart and woven by my hands before they were taken from me. Now I weave with my feet, because I must, because I still can. A heavy silence fell. The queen looked from Duma to Ayula, her face hardening. You stole what did not belong to you, and tried to bury the one who created it. The nobles nodded in agreement. Duma's pride crumbled like dry clay. For the first time, he stood not as a genius, but as a thief. Ayula said nothing more. Her work had spoken for her. The truth had struck, like thunder over a quiet village, and there was no turning back. As the gasps from the stunned crowd still echoed in the royal hall, Ayula slowly stepped forward. Her presence was calm, yet it carried the weight of pain, strength, and truth. She stood before the queen and gently unwrapped the cloth around her arms. The silence deepened. When the stumps of her hands were revealed, a wave of horror swept over everyone. Even the queen stood up in disbelief, covering her mouth in shock. The whispers began. How could someone so cruel cut off the hands of his own sister? Then Ayula spoke, her voice soft but clear, each word striking like a drumbeat. She told them everything, how she once lived peacefully in Ogiyama, with dreams as colorful as her threads, how she had loved her stepbrother, trusted him, how he had taken her to the forest with a lie, and then turned that night into a nightmare. He did not just cut off my hands, she said, her eyes now fixed on Duma. He tried to cut away my spirit, but he failed. I lived, I healed, and now I stand. The entire palace was dead silent. Duma, standing off to the side, was pale, shaking. He tried to speak, to deny it, but the truth had already swallowed the room. The queen's face, once kind and curious, now hardened like stone. You betrayed your blood, your village, and your gift. You lived off stolen glory and tried to bury your sister's light. But you cannot silence what is meant to shine. She turned to the royal guards. Strip him, she commanded. Duma's rich robe was torn from his body. His ornaments, rings, and honors were removed one by one. The crowd watched in silence, some in disbelief, others with anger. The queen's voice echoed across the hall. From this day forward, you are no longer Duma of Ogiyama. You are nameless, landless, cast out. Duma collapsed to his knees, begging, weeping, pleading for mercy. But the queen did not flinch. Let him go live with those he once looked down upon. Let him learn humility the hard way. The guards dragged him out, his cries fading into the distance. Outside the palace gates, he was dropped in the dust, stripped of everything except shame. The people of Zaranu didn't throw stones at him. They didn't shout. They just stared, their silence heavier than judgment. The boy who had once walked tall on stolen talent was now just a forgotten man in torn clothes, wandering the streets like a ghost. Ayula remained in the hall, her head held high. The queen turned to her, full of admiration. But Ayula didn't seek revenge. She had found justice. Karma had done its work, not with fire or sword, but with truth and consequences, and Duma would live with it forever. The palace gates opened wide as people from across the kingdom gathered to witness a celebration unlike any before. Ayula, the girl once left to die in the forest, now stood tall in the royal court, dressed in colors she had woven with her feet, each pattern telling a story of pain, healing, and strength. The queen, moved by Ayula's journey, officially named her the Royal Weaver of Zaranu. But Ayula's dreams went beyond title. With the Queen's support, she opened a weaving school not far from the palace, one where the disabled, the broken, the forgotten could come and learn to create beauty with whatever strength they had left. No one was turned away. Her story inspired them all. The school flourished. People who had once believed they had no value found hope in Ayula's gentle voice and powerful example. Her fame spread far beyond Zaranu, but Ayula stayed humble. She never let pride cloud her heart. She knew where she had come from. She remembered every tear, every lonely night in the forest, every moment of learning to survive without hands. Then, one quiet afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with gold, a figure slowly approached the school gates. It was Duma, but he was no longer the proud boy in silk robes. He wore tattered clothes and walked with a limp, his eyes hollow from years of regret. He stood outside the gate for a long time, staring at the sign that bore his sister's name. Finally, he entered. Ayula was inside, teaching a young girl how to loop thread with her toes. When she looked up and saw Duma, time seemed to freeze. The room grew still. The students watched in silence, as Duma fell to his knees, his voice cracking as he spoke. "I have nothing left, Ayula. No name, no home, only shame. But if you can, if there's anything in your heart left for me, I beg you, forgive me." Tears welled in Ayula's eyes, but she did not look away. She walked up to him, stood quietly for a moment, then nodded. "I forgive you, Duma, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your cruelty in my heart any longer." Her voice was soft but steady. "But I will never forget, because forgetting would mean forgetting all I survived." Duma bowed his head and left, his burden a little lighter, and Ayula turned back to her students, her spirit unshaken. Her story became a legend, not because of revenge, but because of resilience, kindness, and the strength to rise again. And so, in the land of Zaranu, people told the tale of the girl with no hands who created magic with her feet, and the boy who learned too late that jealousy cuts deeper than any knife. Karma had spoken, and the world listened. Thank you for watching this powerful tale of redemption, jealousy, and the unstoppable force of karma. Ayula's journey teaches us that no matter the hardships we face, it's not what happens to us, but how we rise above it that truly defines who we are. Her strength, courage, and compassion remind us that kindness is always the answer, even when faced with the harshest betrayals. And as for Duma, his fall from grace is a reminder that cruelty always has its price, and no one can escape the consequences of their actions. If Ayula's story touched your heart, then share this video with those you care about. Let them see the power of resilience and forgiveness. Like this video if you believe in the power of kindness and justice. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one. Your support means the world to us, and together we can spread stories that remind us all of the importance of integrity, love, and the strength within. Thank you for being part of our community. Stay strong, stay kind, and remember, karma is always watching. Until next time, keep believing in the power of your own story.